I never thought that in all the time of doing cars on television and film that I'd actually be discussing the career of the great Marion Michael Morrison, also known as Marion Robert Morrison, also known as Duke, also known as John Wayne. It's really not something I ever thought I'd cover, because John Wayne primarily is known, of course, for making westerns, not for contemporary films. But what I remembered recently when Mr. Coleman, Rubbish Mechanic, whose channel you can also find on YouTube, asked me, is that John Wayne was actually in one of the most important films for fans of Mark II Capris and Mark I Ford Granadas and Consuls, which is the 1975 film primarily shot in London, Brannigan. Brannigan was made towards the end of John Wayne's life, and he was about 67, I think, when he made the film, which, you know, is quite remarkable. Very, very long career. Started in about 1929, 1930, and to see him, you know, in such a different type of film from what you associate him with, I don't know, The Searchers, Rio Lobo, just any one of hundreds and hundreds of films that he appeared in as the, you know, the definitive cowboy, is remarkable. But it's an interesting film to see, and it contains a lot of British actors who a lot of you would recognise. We've got people like Henney, Tony Robinson, Richard Attenborough, Judy, I think it's Judy Geeson, not Geeson as far as I know, and Daniel Pillon. The idea behind Brannigan is that Jim Brannigan, who's a tough Chicago lieutenant or lieutenant, has been asked to come over to London to extradite a Chicago gangster by the name, let me just get this right, Ben Larkin, played by John Vernon. And what he finds is that Ben Larkin is kidnapped upon his arrival in London. It doesn't go very well. He fails to complete his mission initially. The lawyer who Larkin has, played by Mel Ferrer, commonly named Mel Fields, he tries to sort of arrange like a ransom payoff for the safe return of Ben, but it actually turns out that the mobster himself is in cahoots with his lawyer, and they basically ripped everybody off who kidnappers. Mel Fields actually kills most of them, apart from the curious shady hitman who drives an E-Type by the name of Gorman, who's Daniel Pillen. And at the end of the film, it all kind of goes wrong for both of them. In true Chicago mobster style, Ben ends up losing a finger, which is one of the kind of things which I suppose differentiates this film from one that's primarily about British gangsters. And the rest of the film actually has a lot of themes in it about John Wayne's character, Jim Brannigan, being a fish out of water. He is driven around London by Jennifer, who's one of the members of the Metropolitan Police in a very, very nice Consul GT. And he comes at loggerheads with Richard Attenborough, the great man himself, playing a character called Commander Swan, who wants everything kind of, done by the book and not in this sort of bravado way that Brannigan would want to do it. Anyway, that's enough talk about John Wayne in general and this particular film. Directed by, of course, Douglas Hickox, who directed a film called Sitting Target in 1971, I believe. I think it was released in 72. So yeah, experienced of this type of film, I would say. The theme tune and the title sequence are hilarious. It's literally just lots and lots of images of a gun and a police badge, with some music that sounds to me terribly like 70s library music. But anyway, this isn't a class on film criticism, this is about cars. So let's get into those. Now, the principal car we actually see in Brannigan is very, very similar to the one used in the Sweeney, or rather the first 3 or so series of the Sweeney. It's a 1974 Ford Consul GT with the 3-litre S6 engine. This car was from the Ford press fleet, like a lot of other ones were, and this one is SPU 802M. We'll get on to more familiar registration numbers in a second, but the car's only real difference between the one used in the Sweeney and the one used in the film is the colour. That's it. Everything else I think is the same, which is interesting. The other main vehicle, I suppose, used in Brannigan, it's not that exciting, is a 1974 Austin Morris J4. It was the predecessor to the Sherpa van. In fact, the rear bodywork looks very much like the bodywork used on the early Sherpa vans. VLK 326M. There's a really weird continuity error with that van though. The number plate on that goes up and down on the front of the car as you see it. So in some scenes you'll see it in the right place, some scenes you'll see it too high up. So they clearly used more than one van to film that. More Ford press cars are in some ways the most famous car from Brannigan. It's not the one that's most used, but it's certainly probably the most famous one. A 1974 Ford Capri Mark II 3000 GT SPU 806M. Now, this particular Capri, we think, was doubled in a lot of scenes by lesser models, maybe a 1.3 or 1.6. Certainly they messed the sound up on this, and it doesn't sound quite right. It sounds like a 4-cylinder car, whereas the actual engine of that was an Essex V6. So when there's a chase over Tower Bridge, and they use a model Capri at one stage, which looks a bit rubbish, the car, I think they sort of destroy by kind of it falling on a skip and everything like that. Or rather, it drives onto a skip at the end. It doesn't quite fall onto it, it drives on top of it. That probably was one of the stunt ones. I think Peter Brayham, who worked on the Sweeney and other series at the time, was responsible for the driving in this film. Probably the 1.3 or 1.6 double Capri was destroyed. Another Ford press car used in Brannigan is a 1974 Ford Escort 1300E with a nice vinyl roof. Very, very period looking car, I must say. Rather remarkable. This has a more familiar press plate, NHK 271M, although for reasons I don't really understand, there's one with a mock plate in it, which I think doubles for the other car. I don't know whether that one was unavailable or something. NHK 371M, that's clearly not a real plate. You see that in various scenes, but they are meant to be the same car, of course. Yeah, the Escort Mark 1 to me always looks a bit nicer than the Mark 2, unless you're talking about the RS2000 used in the professionals, in which case, you know, what else can you say? But yeah, certainly this is a smart looking car. Now we're getting into some very tasty vehicles indeed. A 1974 Ford Granada Ghia with a 3-litre engine, SPU 850M, beautiful dark blue colour, lovely, you know, correct grille on that car for the Ghia models, absolutely lovely. And finally, for the Ford press fleet, a 1974 Ford Granada Coupe 3-litre Ghia, NHK 293M, 2 digits away from the most famous consul of all time. Again, not the right to the colour or anything, but this car was clearly registered at the same time as the car used in Sweeney around April 1974, and NHK 296M, of course, was a Cortina used in Sweeney. NHK 292M was another Granada, I believe. You see that in the Sweeney episode Thin Ice, I believe, sort of like a green colour. But yes, certainly a film that's very, very prevalent in its product placement for the Ford Motor Company. Another sort of tie that you can use for this particular film and the Sweeney is the cars that the villains drive. The main car chase that happens uses an S-Type, but actually Gorman, the hitman, Daniel Pillen, he drives a 1966 Jaguar E-Type 4.2 2+2 coupe. Obviously I have also driven a 1966 Jaguar E-Type 4.2 2+2 coupe, and I will link the video to that in the description below. Yes, I don't know why it's got red pinstriping onto or anything. The thing gets completely destroyed at the end of the film. Once again, that E-Type doesn't have the correct engine noise. It sounds more like a 4-cylinder car, not the XK 6-cylinder would have been in it, so I don't know what was going on with the sound editing. Who knows? The car that the Capri goes up against is a 1966 Jaguar S-Type RJH339D. It does look so much like a car chase of the Sweeney, because got this brand new Ford going up against an old Jaguar, and a lot of the places they used, which are in Battersea and Wandsworth, they're places that frequently are also used for Sweeney car chases. So yeah, it's interesting to see all that. You do think sometimes you are just in the Sweeney, but clearly you got John Wayne in it, so it's an interesting kind of hybrid, I suppose, of a film between the British things and what was going on at the time, and, you know, obviously American police films and John Wayne films. The motorbike that you see in the film that I believe is the same one used by Tony Robinson is a 1965 James Cadet 150 M16. I don't even know much about motorbikes, that's just what I found out from looking online, but yeah. Sorry about that. My phone appears to be overheating because it's very hot today. So yes, a James Cadet, I think driven by Tony Robinson. Then we're going to get into some American police cars used in the Chicago sequences of Brannigan. A 1969 Plymouth Fury. I gather that's not a real police car, it's just one mocked up for the film. And then a 1973 Chevrolet Bel Air that looks a bit more convincing. You ought to know more about Bel Airs from that era, then obviously watch Live and Let Die. And I've done an episode on that on cars on television and film. There's a very strange Rolls-Royce Silver Shadow, a very early one, a 65 car. This is the first year of production, NAR 401C. and that has a very bizarre Webasto sunroof on it that only comes down the passenger side of the car but all the way along. Yeah, very strange. There's also probably another car used as well as a very similar car, because that doesn't have the same type of sunroof on it. Yes, just the level of detail that we go into on this series. I've had to take the camera out of its holder because it's in direct sunlight and it just keeps overheating. So we're going to have to do things the old-fashioned way. I'm just going to have to hold this whilst I complete the rest of this episode. I do apologise, viewers. That's the only way it's going to have to be done today. The last 4 cars used in Brannigan are a 1969 Ford Custom. That's in the Chicago sequences. That looks pretty rubbish considering it's only 5 years old when the film was actually made. A 1971 Range Rover, that I gather was used in a load of other films, including The Omen. It's STP-111J. There's a Morris Minor 1000 police car. Now the resources online that I found say it's a 64 model, but you can clearly see it's a G plate, so I'm going to say 68 or 69 with that one. Panda car that they used a lot of with the police forces at the time. And the last one is a 1971 Rover 3500 police car that was you know, the sort of thing you'd find in all sorts of films and television series in the 70s in Britain. I think it's GYM 31K. So there we are. That was the cars used in the 1975 John Wayne film Brannigan. Is it worth watching Brannigan in 2020? Well, particularly if you're a fan of Ford Granadas and Consuls and things like that, then you absolutely love it. I don't say it's John Wayne's best work. I quite enjoy watching it, I must say. Richard Attenborough is a very good you know, addition to the cast, although all that fake edge of noise is a bit silly. Anyway, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more of the same if you haven't done so already. Don't forget to like this video, to leave a comment below. I do apologise once again about the issues I've had recording the video today. I've got a Facebook page, facebook.com/Lloyd Vehicle Consulting. Also Instagram, instagram.com/Lloyd_Vehicle_Consulting. And thank you ever so much indeed once again for watching.